You type one sentence, you press enter, and a heartbeat later, a word comes back. Across this whole course, we've taken that machine apart, one piece at a time. Tokens, meaning attention, layers, training the way it picks each word. You've seen every one of those parts on its own now, but you've never watched them all run together, start to finish, on a single real prompt. So that's what we are going to do one last time. Here's the sentence we'll follow the whole way through. The capital of France is. We'll walk it into the machine on the left, past every stage you've learned, and watch a word come out the other side. And this time you will be able to name every box it passes through. Here is the question I want to land by the end. What actually happens in that fraction of a second between pressing enter and getting a word back? Watch it enter on the left, because the very first thing the machine does is cut it up. It doesn't read words the way you do, it reads pieces called tokens. The capital of France is gets sliced into a short row of these little chips. This was the tokenizer, and it's where every weird spelling quirk we saw comes from. Each chip is really just a number, an ID pointing to one entry in the model's vocabulary. So right away, your sentence stopped being letters and became a row of numbers. Next, each of those ID numbers gets looked up and turned into a long list of numbers, a point in space. We call that point an embedding, and words with related meanings land near each other on the map. So the geometry itself is carrying the meaning. Right now though, those points are generic, just the plain dictionary sense of each word. They don't yet know they landed in this particular sentence. Fixing that is the next stage, and it's the one that changed the whole field. Now the tokens are finally allowed to look at each other, and this is attention. Every token asks a question, checks all the tokens that came before it, and pulls in the ones that matter. Our last token is looks back across the sentence and grabs onto capital and France. That's how is stops being a generic word and starts to mean is in a sentence about the capital of France. This was the mechanism that changed everything. Attention doesn't run on its own, though it sits inside a repeating unit we called a transformer block. Inside that block, a handful of attention heads each look for a different relationship at once. Then a small network does a bit of private thinking on every token. And all of it rides on a stream that carries information straight up the machine. The version running today has upgrades on top of that, the ones that let it hold a long document in mind and run fast. But the shape is the same old sketch, just tuned. Here is the part that's easy to miss, so watch the height of the machine. That block isn't run once. It's stacked dozens of times, one on top of the next. Your sentence flows up through every layer, and at each floor the meaning gets a little sharper. The low layers catch the obvious links, like which word points to which. The high layers combine those into real understanding, like this is a question about a capital city, and the answer should be a place. By the top floor, that last token has quietly gathered everything it needs to make a guess. And at the very top, the machine finally commits, but not to a single word. It gives a score to every word in its whole vocabulary and softens those scores into probabilities that add up to 1. Paris gets a tall bar, Lyon a short one, London shorter still, and thousands of other words get almost nothing. Now, every number that shaped those bars was learned, not written by a person. The machine read an enormous amount of text and slowly tuned itself to predict what comes next, over and over, which is also exactly why it can be confidently wrong. If the real answer was never in what it read, it doesn't stop and admit that, it just hands you its most plausible guess anyway. There's a reason this feels like talking to a helpful assistant and not a random stretch of the internet. After all that reading, the machine went through a second education. First, it was shown good examples of following instructions, so it learned to answer rather than ramble. Then it was nudged toward the replies that people actually preferred. That's why the tall bar here is a clean, direct Paris instead of a messy web page. And for genuinely hard questions, some models first run this whole loop quietly on a scratch pad before they answer. Our prompt is easy, so it skips that, but the machinery would be exactly the one we've been tracing. So we are standing at the top with a fan of probabilities, and the machine still has to actually choose one. That choice is a separate step called decoding. A careful setting almost always takes the tallest bar, so here it takes Paris. Turn the temperature up and it would sometimes reach for a shorter bar instead, which is why the same prompt can give you different answers. Either way, one token gets picked and it drops out of the machine on the right. Paris, the first word of the answer, but the machine isn't finished because it only ever predicts one token at a time. So watch what it does with the word it just made. It adds Paris onto the end of the sentence and then it runs the entire machine again from the left. Tokenize, embed, attention, all those layers, a fresh fan of bars, another pick. This time the input is the capital of France is Paris, and now the tallest bar is just a full stop. It picks it, the sentence is complete, and the loop finally comes to rest. So let's answer the question we opened with. What actually happens in that fraction of a second between pressing enter and a word coming back? This happened. The machine cut your sentence into tokens, turned each one into a point in space, let them look at each other through attention and carried them up through a tall stack of layers. At the top, it weighed every possible next word, picked one and then looped the whole thing to write the word after that. Every single box in that picture is now something you can name and explain. When we started, this was one mysterious machine that turned your words into its words. Now it's a sequence of plain steps and there isn't a magic one hiding in the middle anymore. That was the whole point of taking it apart. You came in asking what a language model does and you are leaving knowing how it does it, one honest mechanism at a time. Thanks for following the whole trace with me all the way to the end.